Hello and welcome to this evening's debate in the race for Congress, Nebraska's 2nd Congressional District. I'm Michael Severe from the Omaha World-Herald.
And I'm Craig Negrelli from KMTV. We will be your moderators. Thank you for joining us. For the next hour, we are hoping to have a robust exchange of ideas between the two candidates. Republican challenger Don Bacon, a retired brigadier general who lives in Papillion, and Democrat Brad Ashford, the incumbent congressman and former state senator from Omaha. We're going to make the debate as free-flowing as we can, but we want to give equal time to each candidate. We are asking them to keep their answers at about 60 seconds. When we ask you to move on, please do so.
In addition, we reserve the right to ask follow-up questions. We'll also give you a chance to respond if you're directly criticized by your opponent. So let's get started. Mr. Ashford drew the first question at the drawing of cards held earlier. Mr. Ashford, we start with debate with questions about the presidential race and your party's two nominees. As a member of the House Armed Services Committee, you received classified briefings in light of Clinton's controversial email system, a system that the FBI director called reckless. How can you trust your party's presidential nominee to handle confidential material in the White House?
Craig and Michael, thank you, first of all, for putting this together. It's an exceptional opportunity for us, for both of us, and we appreciate it. Thanks to KMTV and to the Omaha World-Herald. You're right. I received classified briefings on the Armed Services Committee, on the Emerging Threat Subcommittee, and also on the Strategic Forces Subcommittee on a pretty much weekly basis. And we are told about the classified information that we're getting, and it is part of how I make my judgments on the floor and in the votes that we take in the committee. There's no excuse for Secretary Clinton's use of a private server, and I've said that over and over again. However, I do believe that Secretary Clinton has the experience and certainly the relationships in the Congress to move our country forward. She knows the world leaders. She knows the leaders in the Congress, both in the House and in the Senate, and that's a critical part of as we move forward to have those kinds of relationships.
Thank you, Mr. Ashford. You have 30 seconds, Mr. Bacon.
The emails that she had on, there were 2,000 classified emails. Some were top secret. Some had information about agents that were serving our country abroad. It undermined the national security of our country. And then she lied to the American people for 16 months. And she's still lying about the fact that some of the information was not stamped classified, but they were. I think she was wrong. She undermined our nation's security.
Mr. Bacon, this next question is for you, and you have 60 seconds. You have not ruled out the possibility of voting for Donald Trump, although you want him to step down. Given your military background, do you believe he is fit to serve as Commander-in-Chief?
Well, I served 5 times as a commander in the United States Air Force, 8,000 folks in one command, 7,000 on down. If I would have said the things that he said, I would have been relieved of duty. They were embarrassing, they were wrong, inappropriate, unacceptable comments. However, if I would have done what Hillary Clinton did, I would have got court-martialed and sent to jail for having secrets and compromising our security. But let me share with you, I did take a hard stand Friday and Saturday. I still do. I've had family members who have been sexually assaulted, and I see the scars. We have to stand tall on this. But in the end, he said something wrong. She's done something wrong.
Mr. Ashford?
You know, Don, you really can't have it both ways. I think, first of all, I believe you said that you were very supportive of Donald Trump throughout the many statements that he's made up until the weekend. Then you suggested that he, quite frankly, should not be, he should step down, and then you said, but you would vote for him, and you said again you would vote for him. He called the generals rebel. He called the generals rebel. Those kinds of statements are reflective of his character, and I don't think he is competent or qualified to be President of the United States.
If I may.
Yes.
You know, my candidate or nominee, I didn't support during the primary. He wasn't my first or second choice, but Brad has been in the leadership team of Hillary Clinton since last December and has supported her. In the end, he said things that were inappropriate and they were indefensible, but she did things that undermined the nation's security and lied to our country. So I'm going to have to vote for someone that I have reservations about, but in the end, I'll support him over her, because in the end, we cannot afford to have her leading our country, spending more, taxing more, and undermining our nation's security.
We're going to talk national security now. We're going to start with Mr. Ashford. Which nation do you think poses the greatest long-term threat to the United States, and why, Mr. Ashford?
Russia. poses the greatest long-term threat. And as I mentioned earlier, I sit on the Armed Services Emerging Threat Subcommittee. I receive classified briefings every week on the Russian threat. There's absolutely no question to me, there's no question that for me, Russia represents a threat that will be with us for a long time to come. And they've exhibited that in Syria, in Crimea, throughout the Baltic. I've had the opportunity to visit our leaders throughout the Middle East and in the Baltic. And it's clear to me that Russia is pushing and pushing. We've made some decisions in the last year or so to aggressively defend against that. But the cyber issue is critical, and we need to stand up our cyber command as we are doing to address this. But Russia clearly is, in my view, the threat.
Mr. Bacon, you have 60 seconds to answer the question.
Well, cyber command's been stood up for a couple of years now. I've been to Russia. I've been an intelligence officer for roughly 30 years, also doing reconnaissance. I've also been involved with cyber as well as a 30-year Air Force veteran. I do think Russia is the largest existential threat. They have intercontinental ballistic missiles, bombers, submarines. Putin has seen weakness in this president, and he's trying to push out there to see how far he can go. We need to be strong and have a strong deterrence. But I think the more volatile threat is Iran in 10 years. They have sworn the destruction of Israel. They're going to have a nuclear capability that's recognized, perhaps in a decade. And that's what scares me most at about 10 years out.
Mr. Bacon, how would you rate President Obama's strategy of fighting Islamic State militants in Iraq and Syria? And what, if anything, would you do differently?
Well, I've been deployed 4 times in the Middle East. I did it 1 year in Baghdad with General Petraeus. Then I commanded a squadron during the invasion of Iraq. I spent probably the last 10 years, roughly, studying the Islamic terrorism threat. I think President Obama did too little, too late when it came to going after ISIS. The bombing campaign for several years was like 6 to 7 strikes a day. Those were pinpricks when you look at the size of the territory that ISIS controlled. We have stepped up the air campaign, and we need to do more. But frankly, we got to be brave. We have to have a holistic strategy to defeat these folks. We have to go after their finances. We have to degrade the cyber recruiting that they do over the internet. And then we have to also have a conversation about what motivates these folks to join so we can undermine them, working with the Sunni friends and more moderate nations.
Mr. Ashford, 60 seconds on President Obama's strategy of fighting the Islamic State.
First of all, we need a no-fly zone in Syria, and we need a safe zone in Syria, unquestionably. And we should have done that before, and I criticize the president for not making that decision earlier. We are up to 20 strikes a day. We have killed 45,000 ISIS fighters, but the fight will go on. It needs to go on. In Iraq, we have been able to push back ISIS and have been able to get 45% of the territory back that was taken by ISIS and 20% in Syria. We need an authorization for use of force. I have called for that since the day I came into Congress, an authorization for use of force which will set the mission. When I was in the Middle East, I had 3 trips to the Middle East. Our commanders said, we need this, we need it now, we need to make sure that we do not cut the budget for the military anymore and that we add to it, and we've done that. We need to have a robust funding, stable funding. We need to have an authorization for use of force, a no-fly zone and a safe zone, and then we have to have some sort of way of moving forward after ISIS is destroyed, and that needs to be part of the AUMF.
Next question, gentlemen.
If I may?
Yes, sure. Go, sir.
I do think we do need an authorization to use force. It's been since 9/11, then the invasion of Iraq. I would agree there. But I would tell you that ISIS is growing every day, even though there's been some success in Baghdad. They recruit every day over the internet, and roughly 30 people a day are recruited. And we've got to go after the recruiting of ISIS, which is worldwide, some of which stay in their home countries and are self-radicalized and are threats to our own country.
Next question, gentlemen. Russia hacking has come up at the national level with claims the nation is trying to influence this country's elections. How should America defend itself going forward against the foreign cyber attacks? We start off with Mr. Ashford.
Thank you. First of all, we've had a cyber command, but we haven't had the cyber force that we're standing up now. By 2018, we will have approximately 6,200 new cyber warriors under the cyber command force. I think we need, cyber command needs to be a separate combatant command, in my view. Now it's under STRATCOM. I think it ought to be a separate combatant command. We also ought to enlarge our opportunity for working with the private sector, Silicon Valley, and quite frankly, from right here in Omaha, to help with the cyber fight. I had an opportunity to talk to the CEO of Mutual of Omaha a year ago or so, and we came up with this idea of lend-lease, of private sector technology people that we could bring into the military to help with the cyber fight. It's an all-hands-on-deck, private sector, military, to not only defend, but have an offensive strategy against cyber. There's much more to be done. We've had a good start, but we need to do more.
Mr. Bacon, you have 60 seconds to answer the question.
Thank you. I was actually there during the startup of the Air Force Cyber and all the teams that we're building. Russia does pose the largest threat to our cyber. China is very active, though, into our private industry, trying to take our intellectual secrets. We have other countries involved as well. I've been part of the cyber stand-up, and we need to continue investing in cyber and growing the teams. I will tell you that we've made a lot of headway with Russia and China, but we need to do more with the counterterrorism part of our cyber to understand how the Sunni insurgents are using the internet, so we have to grow that capability as well.
All right, Mr. Bacon, a similar topic. You have 60 seconds. We've already discussed Russia, but let's further the conversation. How would you handle Russian President Vladimir Putin? Should we treat him as a friend or foe? Why or why not?
Now, he's become an adversary. We don't want him to be an enemy, but he is surely working against our interests, and he respects strength. So what I fear, what happened in Georgia, where he took away sections of their land, as well as Ukraine with the Crimea area, if we don't stand firm in the Baltics with Lithuania, Estonia, and Latvia, and by the way, I've traveled there and I've worked with those countries. They're great allies. But we have to have a firm hand there and a presence to serve as a deterrence. And by the way, I think NATO does perform a very valuable function here, and we need to continue working with them, but we do need to make sure those countries contribute at the right level. But NATO and our Baltic states need our presence as a deterrence.
Mr. Ashford, how would you handle Vladimir Putin?
He is our adversary, and I believe we need to handle him aggressively. We're doing some of that now. We're rotating troops in and out of Poland. We have our Air Force in Romania. We are counteracting some of the social media efforts in the Baltic states. I've traveled to the Baltic states and to Sweden and to various other countries in the area and to our troops at Mildenhall in England. And there's absolutely no question that Russia, in buzzing our 55th, and Don knows probably better than anybody about the 55th and the buzzing of the Russian planes. But we need to enforce our boundaries in Eastern Europe. We need to be clear, very clear in Syria with a no-fly zone, that if Assad continues to go after the civilian population in Aleppo and other areas, that we are going to resist that with a no-fly zone. We need to make sure that the Russians understand that, and that they understand that we are going to act aggressively if necessary.
I'd like just to make one commentary on that. To do a no-fly zone with the Russians already there is a recipe for conflict with the Russians. So I do not think it's a wise move to do the no-fly zone now. Now, we do need the safe havens. Joe Petraeus has proposed that. We need to put refugees in these areas to help protect them and feed them closer to home so they don't become refugees in Europe and here. But a no-fly area with the Russians is a recipe for conflict unless we coordinate with them. The no-fly zone was the thing to do before they got there. It's not the right thing now unless we coordinate.
I think we do need the no-fly zones, and I think we need to make it very clear to the Russians that we are going to aggressively enforce that against Assad. And I think we can, and that the diplomatic efforts in Geneva have stalled. I think we have to make it very clear to the Russians that we are going to protect civilians in safe zones, but also by enforcing a no-fly zone so that Assad's Air Force is not out in the field going after our Sunni partners, but also the civilian population. And obviously, the 250,000 people who have died and the tragedies of Aleppo need to be, in my view, need to be stopped aggressively.
You're going to have to coordinate with the Russians on this one because they are flying combat sorties every day. It's a recipe for conflict. The no-fly zone should be done before the Russians got there. Our president was too weak and didn't stand up in time to get this done. Now it's too late to be doing that, but we do need the safe havens for the refugees.
Yeah, I just think we need to aggressively do the no-fly zone, and I think we can coordinate with the Russians, but Assad needs to go. Eventually, Assad needs to go. ISIS needs to be destroyed first, but Assad needs to go. And we are coordinating with the Russians now. And I've been in the bases, and I know Don, of course, has, where those conversations go on between the Russians and our people. And there is some coordination going on. But we need to be very firm and clear. And Petraeus is right. We've met with General Petraeus on several occasions in the Armed Services Committee. His plan for a safe zone is appropriate, and I would support it.
We're going to move on to health care now. Mr. Ashford, first question goes to you to start off. One of the more popular features of the health care law is the provision that bars insurance companies from denying coverage based on pre-existing conditions. The most unpopular part is the mandate, which requires everyone to have insurance. Experts say the two go hand in hand. Without the mandate, people would get insurance once they've had a heart attack. Do you agree? Can we have one without the other? Starting with you, Mr. Ashford.
First of all, in the Congress, there have been over 60, close to 70 now, efforts to repeal the ACA without a replacement plan. And so we've wasted, from 2010 till now, we've wasted time when we could be trying to reform it. And I do think we need to reform it. You're going to have to require, in order to cover for pre-existing conditions for 26-year-olds and their family, and for caps, lifetime caps, individuals are going to have to buy insurance. But we need to make that insurance more affordable. We need to work with insurance companies to do that. We need to work with small businesses to remove some of the mandates on them, because I don't think they are necessary. Employers already do provide insurance to their employees across the country. So I do think the mandates for individuals having insurance are important, but we have to get the cost down. We have to get costs down by reforming Obamacare, and that means working across the aisle to do it. And I've signed on to 10 bills to try to reform it, but it has to be done in a bipartisan way.
Speaking of 60 seconds, pre-existing conditions along with the mandate.
Well, we need to cover pre-existing conditions, but we don't have to do that with Obamacare. But for the rest, Brad Ashford is standing with Obamacare, one of the worst things have done to our economy. I tell you, I go around to small businesses all the time. It's always the number one or the number two problems they talk about. The average family is paying more than $3,700 in premiums now. Deductibles have skyrocketed. Obamacare has been a failure. It's been a failure to the middle class. It's been a failure to small businesses. I would repeal and replace Obamacare. There are proposals right now in Congress to put out there. And we can fix this, but put it down at the state level. We do not want federal bureaucrats in charge, but Brad has voted for it twice, and it's a failure.
Mr. Bacon, what about the mandate? Do you believe the mandate needs to go?
No, I would take away all of Obamacare to include the mandate. Now, we do need pre-existing coverages. We can do that at the state level. We can ensure that folks are covered, 26-year-olds and below with their family. But we don't need Washington, D.C. and bureaucrats in D.C. running. We need patient-centered health care where people can take their insurance policy and go from job to job. These are some of the proposals that are now in Congress that we can enact. But Obamacare is a failure, and he should have opposed it. He stood with Nancy Pelosi and supported her in this effort.
Don, let's get the facts straight. When I ran, I said I would not have voted for Obamacare because it was not a bipartisan effort. What needs to be done in Washington is we need to address all of these problems in a bipartisan way. Your party has proposed the repeal of Obamacare 11 or 12 times since I've been there, about 55 or 60 times before I got there, without any replacement. So what do you tell the 20 million people now that do have insurance? What do you tell those who have pre-existing conditions that are now being dealt with that they have insurance? What do you tell the people with mental illness? We have to reform it, but that means working across the aisle. I want to see the plan that you're talking about. What is the plan you're talking about? I would be more than happy to support changes, and I've got 10 bills I'm co-sponsors of getting rid of the Cadillac tax.
Let's just specify one of the things that you brought up in there, Mr. Ashford. For those who say get rid of Obamacare, I think you threw out the figure 20 million, and it's anywhere between 16.5 and 20 million is what we've been hearing.
I think it's 20 overall, but I think it's 9 on the exchanges and the rest and other.
Okay.
Million off of Blue Cross Blue Shield.
Well, let's talk to
Mr. Bacon
and Blue Shield and find out.
Hold on, Mr. Ashford.
What would you do in terms of the getting rid of Obamacare? Would you support stripping people of their coverage? And what would you do with the people who signed up, got the coverage, and now here in 2016, it appears the rules might change?
So there's multiple great proposals right now in Congress. Dr. Price, he's a congressman from Georgia, orthopedic surgeon. In fact, he was just here in town this week briefing people on these proposals. What we need to do is get the regulatory authority out of Washington, D.C., out of the hands of the state level. What we want to do is ensure that patients, when you get your own coverage, you can go from job to job and take that coverage with you. We want more competition to help drive down costs. Obamacare has let the costs skyrocket. We need more competition to get that done. But we can cover folks and provide pre-existing coverage and also help out 26-year-olds and below, stay with their family, and still have the health care run at the state level and get it out of Washington, D.C.
Yeah, that's not a proposal, Don. I've been there on the floor for 19 months, taken several votes on the issue, not to repeal, but to find a way to fix it. And I know Dr. Price. I know that people talk about this sort of mysterious plan out there. I have never seen it. I've never seen one single suggestion in legislative form. I would be happy to look at a reform of Obamacare if someone would bring it forward in a legislative package. It is legislative negligence, in my view, to take what is purely a political position to repeal something because it's called Obamacare and the president proposed it, and it passed in a partisan manner, which I don't agree with. But that isn't fixing it. We have to fix it. We have to make sure that those 20 million continue to have coverage. We do need more competition. We need to give insurance companies the ability to do that. We need to deregulate physicians. They've been overly regulated. All those things we need to do, but we need to do it with a plan. I have not seen a plan. If you have a plan, I'd be happy to look at it.
Mr. Ashford, having said that, if you have a divided House and Senate like we do, well, the Republicans control the House and they control the Senate now. If the Democrats are to take back the Senate, but the Republicans control the House, what you just said about fixing it and improving it, aren't we just going to see a stalemate for another 3 or 4 years?
I think we're on the way to fixing it. First of all, I think the Cadillac tax is gone. If you talk to small businesses and to medium or large-sized businesses in their human resources department, the one area that we could do right away, and I think we might do it in the lame duck, is to get rid of the Cadillac tax. For the first time in the history of health care insurance, we're taxing health care insurance. We've never done that before. One of the reasons why employers bought into health care insurance after the war was because it was a benefit that was not taxed. We need to get rid of the Cadillac tax. There was an employer I was with the other day that talked about large employer, 40% of there'd be a 40% increase in the premium costs if we don't get rid of the Cadillac tax. I think we need to make sure that we get rid of the mandate that businesses over 30 employees have to buy insurance. That's a crippler for small business. We need to look at the taxes that small businesses are being required to pay. So I would vote for all those things, Don, and I'd vote for giving the states more flexibility on products that insurance companies offer.
All right, we've tackled national security and health care. At this point, we will let the candidates catch their breath a bit. When we come back, they will ask each other a question. Stay with us. You're watching the Ashford-Bacon Congressional Debate right here on KMTV.
I had memory foams, I had feather pillows. I'd always wake up with neck pain. After sleeping on my pillow, I didn't wake up with the headaches. I was more aligned.
I didn't realize the connection between the pillow and sleep. When I switched to my pillow, I got a better night's sleep, and I love it.
Hello, I'm Mike Lindell, inventor of MyPillow. My patented fill adjusts to your exact individual needs, and it holds that support all night long to take the pressure off your shoulders and keep your neck aligned so you get the best night's sleep of your life.
MyPillow is the official pillow of the National Sleep Foundation. MyPillow is machine washable and dryable and comes with a 60-day money-back guarantee and an amazing 10-year warranty. Plus, every MyPillow is made in the USA.
I personally guarantee that MyPillow will be the most comfortable pillow you'll ever own. Go to MyPillow.com or call now to order one of my pillows. When you do, I'll give you a second one absolutely free.
For the best night's sleep in the whole wide world, visit MyPillow.com.
Gridlock in Washington is putting our country at risk.
Defending America should never be a partisan issue. That's exactly why we need Brad Ashford in Congress.
Brad stood up to the Obama administration opposing closing Gitmo.
As a former prosecutor, I know we can trust Brad to keep Nebraska safe.
And Brad's working with both parties to destroy ISIS.
Thank you, Brad, for keeping our kids safe.
I'm Brad Ashford, and I approve this message because keeping our country safe must be our top priority.
Thank you, Brad.
Switch to CenturyLink and get up to 40 megs of high-speed internet for just $20 a month. That's the speed you need to stream, game, connect on social media, learn, shop, and more with fast in-home Wi-Fi. So call 844-565-LINK. Get up to 40 megs of high-speed internet for just $20 a month for 1 year when bundled with a qualifying home phone plan. Speed may not be available in your area. Call today.
When people depend on you, you can depend on this. And with America's longest-lasting pickups, you're always ready to lend a hand, clear the way, and carry the weight with load-leveling rear air suspension, so you can get there first and stay till the end. Get the power of lasting performance now during Ram Power Days. Now get 20% off MSRP cash allowance on select 2016 Ram 1500 models in dealer stock.
We are back, and we are at the point in the debate where each candidate will be given a chance to ask his opponent a question. Based upon a drawing of cards, Mr. Ashford goes first.
Don, I have only 3 Democrats have voted more times than me with Republicans. The Congressional Quarterly has said that I am the sixth most bipartisan member of the United States Congress. They're an objective observer of the Hill. I have voted to buck my party on many, many occasions. I voted to keep Gitmo open. I voted against the Iran deal, and I voted for full accountability at the Veterans Administration. Would you pick 3 Republican initiatives or issues where you would buck your party? And tell me what those are.
Well, first of all, depending on who wins the presidency here this coming election, I will support NATO because I think NATO deserves the support. So if President Trump comes in and he makes that one of his initiatives, I'll stand and ensure that I'm a strong voice for NATO. I also will be careful about the use of force in Syria. I think I've seen combat firsthand, and I want to be careful about the use of force. And so I'll be a voice to ensure that we don't overreach and put ourselves in a bad situation.
Okay, 2 of them there, Mr. Ashford. NATO and Syria that Mr. Bacon just noted. You have 30 seconds.
I don't think those are the Republicans on the Armed Services Committee support NATO wholeheartedly. So I don't think that's a Republican position that you'd be bucking. As far as Syria, I think there's a difference of opinion, but certainly there are Republicans who support a no-fly zone and Republicans who don't. I would ask, are there any issues where you would differ with the Republican position, not the Trump position, the Republican position? Because I don't think the Trump position and the Republican positions are necessarily the same.
Another thing I would point out, because I got only 2 points there, but a third one is I would be careful, too, how we talk about immigration and securing our borders. We do need to secure our borders. We have 300,000 to 400,000 folks coming here illegally. But once we do that, and we do employer enforcement and some other measures to secure the border, I would have a more moderate approach to how to handle the 12 million folks that are here. I don't think a one-size-fits-all approach works. So some people are good neighbors, doing good in their community. We ought to provide a pathway for legalization. So I think I have a little more moderate approach. In the end, I'm not a blank check for either party or, for that matter, either president. I want to do what's right for this district, and I want to be a defender of our Constitution.
All right, Mr. Bacon, it's now your turn to ask Mr. Ashford a question.
Okay. I want to talk about ISIS and terror. Do you know which cities in Nebraska are on the ISIS kill list? And what would you do after, say, 48 hours after a major attack if one occurred in Nebraska?
I don't know what cities are on the kill list. I've never been briefed on that I know of. If you do, tell me.
I will, but go ahead, finish your time.
Okay, and what's your next question?
Well, it's which cities are on the ISIS kill list from Nebraska. But what would you do if there was a major attack in Nebraska from ISIS? What would be your response?
Well, my first response would be to bring together our local enforcement people, our Homeland Security people, our FBI, and to deter. Number one, first of all, is to aggressively resist the attack, obviously, and our local law enforcement people need to have and that's why I voted to make sure local law enforcement has the equipment they need if such an attack were to occur, and I voted with the Republican majority to do that. I would then make sure that prior to any attack, hopefully, is that we've had an integrated response to any kind of attack and future attack. Groups, FBI, Homeland Security, the counterintelligence groups, to come together. And I would also make certain that we have access to the technology so that we can find out what sort of additional attacks are occurring. Get into their cell phones, get into their technology to make sure that something else doesn't happen. But number one, local law enforcement has to have the equipment and the ability to respond. And then we would bring in the national team, the FBI, and who's ever on that team to enforce that.
And a lot of these actions would be done by the governor, of course, in presidential decision. But there is one city on the ISIS kill list, and that's Bellevue. That's because of its association with Air Force Base. And I think it's important to know because they listed out the cities they want to attack. And someone on the Armed Services Committee should likely know that, I think. But the real reason I brought this up is I have a close relationship with the mayor of Bellevue who supports me. I've known her when she was a soccer mom. Our kids were playing soccer in the 90s together. And I would talk to her and make sure I knew what she needed, how I could help her out with Congress or any kind of congressional actions. The commander at the 55th Wing right now is someone I've served with 3 times. I would call him. Both county sheriffs, by the way, that are in this district support me. I would talk to them. The county attorney in Sarpy, who's also supporting mine. I have a lot of great relationships that I could leverage, and I would make sure I know how we could support them through my actions in Congress.
Want a final word on this?
Yeah, you know, I like all the people that support you. By the way, Don, I certainly like the mayor of Bellevue. She has a lot of enthusiasm. She's a runner, like you and I are. So she's great.
We're talking about Rita Sanders.
We're talking about Rita. She's great, and she does a great job in Bellevue. One of the proudest things that I've been able to do with my colleagues in the delegation, working across the aisle, is to get that runway done. When you were there, and for years before that, the Offutt runway could not get done. I worked with the White House. The other members of the delegation worked with their strengths. We were able to get the Air Force to go along with that runway, which is going to help protect the 55th's presence there and also protect our national security.
Thank you, Mr. Ashford. We're going to move on now to racial injustice. Okay. In the past year, there's been increased talk about racial tension and racial injustice in this election. Do you believe the Black Lives Matter movement has a valid complaint about racial injustice and the way police sometimes interact with African Americans? Mr. Ashford, you're first.
You know, I served as chairman of the Judiciary Committee for a number of years, and we dealt with these issues all the time. I worked with the Empowerment Network since it was formed in North Omaha. We have in Nebraska some legal responses to some of these problems, and I've talked to many of my friends who are members from the cities that had these issues. One of the things we do here is we have a grand jury automatically impaneled whenever there is a death in the custody of a police officer, when a police officer is involved. That provides transparency and provides the ability for the public to know that that this particular incident has had an immediate look-see. We also, when I was on the Judiciary Committee, we made sure that the Crime Commission collected information on all traffic stops in the community. We know, and anybody can look at where those traffic stops occurred, and that gives the kind of data that we need. I've also worked to try to promote programs on the state level and on the federal level to prevent violence, many of those.
Mr. Ashford, the question, though, is do you believe the Black Lives Matter has a valid complaint about racial injustice?
Sure, and that's why we have to have you know, I was Amir Abdullah, I thought had a great response to what happened at Northwestern. I would not have knelt, obviously, when the national anthem was played, but those young people had a point, and they had the right to protest. Amir Abdullah in Detroit, who plays for the Lions, had a great idea: bring law enforcement together. This is an opportunity to have a collaboration and a discussion.
Mr. Bacon, 60 seconds.
I would say yes, because there have been some situations that were wrong. The gentleman in the Carolinas that was pulled over, and he was behind on child support payments, and he feared, and he ran, shot in the back. That was wrong. I think Black Lives Matter also has a higher meaning, though, when you look at unemployment rates that are 3 and 4, 5 times higher in those urban areas. We got to fix that. We can't, that's unacceptable. We got to work on that. Or when you look at the victimization rates in the same areas, I really believe in the dream of this country that we're all created equal and we're endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights. And we got to work hard to make sure we get there. But I would also say that we need to also defend our law enforcement. They put their lives on the line every day, and we're only talking exceptions of this. Most of them are the best of our American citizens, and it's wrong to throw the entire law enforcement under the bus, as sometimes some people have done. I had a shooting at the base when I was the commander, and one of the things that we did is we brought in someone from the county to investigate it, so folks would know that there was honesty and transparency, no cover-up. And we need to have that philosophy, I believe, when these situations occur.
Let me ask you this.
Okay. Could I just respond to a certain extent? Because we actually have a bill in Congress. My Republican colleague Kevin Kramer from North Dakota and David Scott from Georgia, we have a bill that targets, I think it's a very important bill, that targets 18-year-old to 35-year-old black males. 41% of them are unemployed in this country. And what this bill does is in any large public project that's financed partially publicly or whatever, that the Department of Labor meet with community-based groups in the area where the project is, develop a plan to directly employ black youth, males between 18 and 35. That's the problem Don's talking about. He's right. It needs to be addressed, and this is a bill that can do that in a bipartisan way.
Let me ask you this, Mr. Bacon, if we can continue along on the same track. You said we got to fix this. You cited an example at Offutt, and Mr. Ashford had just mentioned a bill in Washington. What is Congress's role in addressing racial disparity in the country? We've seen local level efforts, but can the federal government actually play a role in addressing the issue of racism in this country and its institutions, the federal government?
We do have a role at the federal government level, but also partnering with the city and the state and the county. It's a team effort. Now, I had a meeting today in North Omaha working with community leaders so I can learn more about how to support these issues. So one of the things we talked about was to ensure that the agencies in Washington, when we find out where to spend money at, that we get it to the right spots that it's working. So I want to ensure from the community that we hear what programs are actually working so we can invest more there and then reduce spending in other areas that are not working. But I think writ large, we got to do more to support our business community. Regulations are making it very hard for small businesses to open and grow. It's the worst economic growth we've had since 1949 coming out of a recession. It's because of the regulatory environment, big government, and we got to do better. And we need some outsiders in Washington that can push this because the insiders and the career politicians aren't getting this done.
Mr. Ashford, is this a federal issue, a state issue, a local issue?
It's all of the above. And I think all hands need to be on deck as we address these issues. I think we both acknowledge that they're out there. Community policing is an incredibly important asset in every community. And we have, I've worked with every police chief since the mid-1980s, and we have had a remarkable number of exceptional police chiefs and members of the force. I mean, we've got a bill in the Congress now, the Kerry-Orozco bill, which gives special status equal to military for the spouse of a law enforcement person who's been killed in action. The federal government has two roles. It needs to make sure that COPS funding, it's a federal program from the Justice Department, is robust, and that goes into helping support community policing. You talk to any chief here, and some of those mentioned by Don that are supporting him, they need that COPS funding. Secondarily, I think we can provide federal guidelines for training on how we deal with violence and how we interact with police and community leaders and people in the community. But the decisions have to be made on the community level. I think there is a funding opportunity as long as it's efficient and earmarked to the right purposes.
I think expanded federal oversight would be a mistake. We want to ensure that our local police have the authority with the mayors down at the local level. There's more and more proposals about getting the long arm of the federal government to micromanage and do training. There's even talk about federalization of the police force. That's big government, and I would oppose that.
And I absolutely oppose it too. And I've had a lifetime of work with the Omaha Police Division and all the police forces around, both as Judiciary Chair and running the Housing Authority and other community projects I've worked on. It shouldn't be a federal program. What I'm saying is that there is money there for COPS, and the COPS funding program, and it should be robust, and it should be expanded to address the concerns that you've raised, and that it enhances cities like ours, and it shouldn't go to every city. It should go to necessarily in the same proportion, because it should go to cities like ours that have actually done the job of enhancing community policing.
We have to move on to immigration now, gentlemen. You both agree the nation's borders need to be strengthened. But this question deals solely with the estimated 11 million immigrants living in this country. Pathway to citizenship, or do you side with Donald Trump, who's vowed to deport them all? We start with you, Mr. Ashford.
Well, we're not going to deport 11 million people. I support a path, and always have. I believe it makes sense both economically and on a humanitarian basis that we provide a way for individuals who are here. About 50% of those who are here have overstayed their visas, and 50% have not. Of the 11 million, we need to find a way for those individuals to earn their pathway to citizenship. Whether it's they have to pay their taxes, they could not have violated the law. They have to adhere to the rules that apply to everybody else. And then I think they should have to apply. And Congress doesn't debate this issue. They talk about securing the borders, which I absolutely support. I don't support a wall, but they've always what politicians say. First of all, secure the wall, then we'll talk about the issue of citizenship. That has to be done in parallel. We need more border security people. We need more technology on the border. We don't need a wall, but we need a pathway to citizenship with clear rules set forth so that individuals know what the rules are and can get there.
Mr. Bacon.
Well, we have a failed policy right now with our immigration. This last 7 years with executive orders, circumventing around Congress, it's been wrong. President Obama's been wrong with these executive orders. Supported by Nancy Pelosi, who Brad Ashford wants to have a speaker again here this next term, which would be bad. And I think the thing that we have to do with the 11 to 12 million folks who are here, it has to be connected in a more comprehensive way with securing the border. You're not going to be able to come up with a compromise with the 11 or 12 million here unless folks in our country know that we have secured the border. And I think it's going to involve employer enforcement, so folks cannot get jobs when they come here illegally. But once you do that, then I think people will be more willing to discuss how do we handle appropriately and with compassion the 11 and 12 million people are here. I oppose pathway to citizenship for those who come here illegally because people have been waiting for 10 years to do it right. But I think there's a pathway for legalized status for those who are working and are good community neighbors and are good neighbors in general. But those who are bad or have had crimes, who are not supporting themselves, then we need to ask them to go back home.
If someone's committed a crime, they have to go back home. And actually, under President Obama, he has issued executive orders because Congress has failed to act. The excuse given by those who oppose immigration reform, and I don't think you can say to a young dreamer who came here at 2 or 3 years old, that's gone to school here, has lived a good life, has played sports, is a constructive part of the school and of the community, you can't say that they can't earn citizenship. Why on earth can that young person not have an opportunity to earn citizenship? But we've deported more people than we've ever deported before because Congress has failed to act and set forth rules and regulations. Bush had a bill that I supported and do support now, something like it. It passed the Senate, and the Congress wouldn't even take it up. Speaker Boehner wouldn't even take it up.
We're not deporting more people than ever. We're actually releasing folks. It's catch and release. That's a mistake, and we were letting people out of jail that were arrested who've gone on to commit crimes. It's wrong. It was because of President Obama's executive orders, of which Brad Ashford helped fund those executive orders. We should have taken a harder line with our Homeland Security funding when this came up. In the end, we have between 300,000 and 400,000 people coming here illegally or overstaying their visas every year. That's more than the United States Air Force. We got to do better. We got to secure that border, do employer enforcement, and then we can do the compassionate right thing with the folks who are here. It won't be a one-size-fits-all approach, though.
Next question.
I need to respond to that. My vote on Homeland Security, as you may know, Don, was not what you just suggested. I voted to maintain and keep the Homeland Security office open. What the vote was in fact to not to support the executive order. I voted against my party on that because I would never vote to shut down Homeland Security. That was the vote. It was cynical. It was a gotcha vote. But I would never vote to shut them down. But also, and I also, just a second, also, David Young and I, as you know, have the Sarah Root bill. The Sarah Root bill, David Young from Iowa, a Republican, we have a bipartisan bill which says if you've committed a violent crime, ICE must take custody of that person, and so that what happened to Sarah Root can never happen again. We are responding. We are responding.
We have to let Mr. Bacon. Go ahead.
Yeah, initially he voted against it, then he voted for it. It's the standard Brad Ashford flip-flop on this.
Come on, Don.
The thing is, we have to, when an executive order comes out that breaks the law, the Congress has to take a hard line because the separation of powers demands it. And Brad caved on this to the president and said we've been working in a very dysfunctional immigration environment, and Brad is part of the problem.
All right, let's do this. Let's continue the discussion on immigration. You each have 30 seconds on this particular specific question. We've seen the images of Syrian refugees, including children fleeing that war-torn country. About 50 Syrian refugees have actually resettled in Omaha since May. Donald Trump and others want to ban all Syrian refugees from coming to this country. Would you support such a ban, and what would you do with the Syrian refugees that have settled in Nebraska? 30 seconds, we'll start with you.
So right now we have 10,000 folks arriving here. There's a proposal for 50,000 more. I think we should say no to never, but we need to do very good vetting because the role of the government is to protect our citizens and defend our constitutional rights. And to allow in the 10,000 without hard vetting, you know ISIS is trying, they've already announced that they're trying to infiltrate through those refugees. So I think what we've got to do is carefully vet and be very careful. We're better off trying to protect refugees closer to home with the safe havens.
Mr. Ashford, 30 seconds on Syrian refugees here in Nebraska.
First of all, there are about 6,000 Syrian refugees here. There are 4 million refugees from Syria. There are 6 million displaced persons in Syria. We have taken 6,000. Congressman Charlie Dent from Pennsylvania and Congressman Hudson from North Carolina, both Republicans, came to me and asked if I would be the Democrat co-sponsor on a refugee bill that would provide for more robust vetting. I was, and I am, and Homeland Security and FBI have changed the vetting rules so that when a refugee comes here, after 18 to 24 months of vetting by the UN and the FBI and Homeland Security, they come here and they're vetted for the first year that they're here, and then at the end of the first year, which is a change, and it was a response to the bill that we introduced, they have to go through another background check. So I think we should allow the refugees to come in. They should comply with the procedures that have been implemented, but there have, as far as I know, no incident, certainly in Nebraska, involving a refugee where there's been a terrorist act that I know of.
We'll leave it there. We're going to have to leave it there at immigration. Let's get to the TV and radio ads that so many of our viewers and listeners and readers have seen. Both of you seem like honest guys. It looks like both of your respective political parties are running fear-mongering ads on television and radio that distort your opponent's record. Mr. Ashford, the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee is running an ad suggesting your opponent wants to immediately raise the retirement age for Social Security for everybody, even though he has said he would not change the retirement age for anyone nearing retirement. Do you support these ads, and what would you say here tonight about Social Security?
I just don't support raising the retirement age. I don't think you need to do that at all, ever, whether it's going back to 40 years old or 30 years old or 20 years old. I think there's another plan to make Social Security sustainable for 75 years, which doesn't involve raising the retirement age. I think that's a reduction in benefits. So that's my position.
What about the ad?
What does the ad say, actually?
The ad has a couple that is sitting on the couch, and pretty much they say that they've learned that Mr. Bacon wants to raise Social Security. They've worked long and hard in their lives, and they just found out that they may have to work longer and harder. They can't trust Mr. Bacon, don't want to
I think the message, that's not our ad, obviously, and we have no control over those, but I think the point that's being made in the ads is that raising the retirement age is not good policy. I don't think, Don called it scaremongering, but I don't think that's what it's trying to do. It's trying to graphically show that raising the retirement age is not a good policy.
Want to respond?
Yes, I would love to. First of all, I do not want to raise the retirement age for those in retirement or nearing retirement. We have to make that clear. The ads from Nancy Pelosi, and she's trying her best to re-elect Brad because she wants her guy in the House, but she's working her best to do that, but it's a lie. I've said those who are younger, under 30, that we should consider it because we used to have 42 people paying in for every one taken out. Now it's 3, and soon it's going to be 2 to 1. Leaders step up and provide solutions and try to fix a problem. Politicians like Brad, Nancy Pelosi, want to demagogue issues and politicize it. I frankly have not heard a good proposal from Brad.
Well,
on Social
I'll
Security.
give you one.
We don't trying to give it.
I've not heard one.
Well,
he's been quiet.
I'll give you one. And the Nancy Pelosi stuff, Don, is fine, and I know it's good politics, and you keep talking about me as a career politician. The week after I got elected, you decided to run for office, and you know what you said? We need a change. I didn't even unpack my...
For Nancy Pelosi already.
I'm sure I voted for Nancy Pelosi. But I voted against Nancy Pelosi on most every major initiative.
It's not true.
It is true. It is
Almost
true.
80%
You look at
of the times you voted for.
70. You know what those votes are? Those, for the most part, what happens in Congress. And this stuff you need to study.
I'm not a career legislator like you are. You're right.
You're a good military guy, but I think and you are, and I commend you for that. But your service is commendable without question. But I've had 18 years of being a legislator, and it is complicated, it is different. And know what those votes are.
Ashford, we're going to have to go to break.
Okay, what those votes are procedural votes.
80% of the time he votes with Nancy Pelosi.
Those are procedural votes,
He's only a moderate if you're in California or New York, not Nebraska.
All right, we're going to stop you both right there. It's time for our second and final commercial break. When we come back, closing statements from each candidate. You are watching the Ashford-Bacon congressional debate on KMTV in tandem with the Omaha World-Herald.
You have trouble falling asleep or wake up with a sore neck or headache? Then it's time you discovered MyPillow.
Hello, I'm Mike Lindell, inventor of MyPillow. Just like you, I had problems sleeping. 10 years ago, I invented MyPillow. It took me 2 years to develop because I wanted to have everything you would ever want in a pillow. I made sure that you could adjust my patented fill so you could have the exact support you need as an individual regardless of your sleep position. I also wanted a pillow that would last, so I made MyPillow machine and dryable. I back MyPillow with a 10-year warranty and a 60-day money-back guarantee. Not only that, I do all my own manufacturing in my home state of Minnesota. Now I'm proud to announce that MyPillow is the official pillow of the National Sleep Foundation. I personally guarantee that MyPillow will be the most comfortable pillow you'll ever own. Go to MyPillow.com or call now to order one of my pillows. When you do, I'll give you a second one absolutely free.
For the best night's sleep in the whole wide world, visit MyPillow.com.
Gridlock in Washington is putting our country at risk.
Defending America should never be a partisan issue. That's exactly why we need Brad Ashford in Congress.
Brad stood up to the Obama administration opposing closing Gitmo.
As a former prosecutor, I know we can trust Brad to keep Nebraska safe.
And Brad's working with both parties to destroy ISIS.
Thank you, Brad, for keeping our kids safe.
I'm Brad Ashford, and I approve this message because keeping our country safe must be our top priority.
Thank you, Brad. Right now, get the CenturyLink Prism TV Essential Package bundled with up to 40 megs of high-speed internet for just $70 a month. You'll get over 150 channels with tons of pro and college sports, local and national news, reality and drama shows, hit Hollywood movies, and tons of HD channels. Plus, interactive features like a huge on-demand library, whole home DVR, a wireless set-top box, and Prism on the go for watching TV on your time. You'll also get up to 40 megs of high-speed internet for the whole family to surf, stream, and play online. Bundle and save by getting TV and internet for $70 a month. Just call 844-698-MyTV and switch today for endless entertainment. Can someone pass the popcorn down here? Call 844-698-MyTV and get the Prism TV Essential Package with up to 40 megs of high-speed internet for just $70 a month for 1 year. Speed may not be available in your area. Switch today.
Welcome back. Before we get to the closing statements, one final question. You only have 30 seconds to answer this one. Do you believe the Second Amendment allows for restrictions on any types of firearms a person can own? And can or should we ban assault rifles? 30 seconds, Mr. Ashford.
No, I don't think we should ban assault weapons. But I do think we should have background checks, and we have them in Nebraska. I think we should, the no-fly list and the terrorist watch list, those people should be, there should be background checks done. Between 2004 and 2014, 91% of the people on the terrorist watch list were able to purchase firearms. I think that's a public safety issue. The vast majority of Americans support that.
Thank you, Mr. Ashford. Restriction on any kind of firearms and the assault weapons?
No, I would defend the Second Amendment. I've defended our rights for 30 years, serving the Air Force. I'll defend this one. And one thing I'd point out about the no-fly list, Ted Kennedy was on it. So we need a due process. So if someone's on that no-fly list wrongfully, they have a way to get out of it. Brad should have supported that, because that's important for our rights. The Fifth Amendment should be protected with this no-fly list.
All right, it's time now for closing statements. Each candidate has 90 seconds. Mr. Ashford, you're first.
Thank you, and thank you again, both of you, and thank you to the World-Herald and the KMTV. Everyone needs to get out and vote, and this is going to help us do that. You know, I've had a life, and my family's had a life of public service dating back in Nebraska to 1856, when my father's family came from Ireland, my mother's family came from Sweden in the 1870s. Public service is in my DNA, and it's in the DNA of all Nebraskans. I had the opportunity to serve in the Nebraska legislature for 16 years. That was, in my mind, public service. During that time, I owned a business, I ran a law firm, I raised a family. The Nebraska legislature taught me many things. The one thing it really taught me was Nebraskans have a unique way of. The unicameral legislature is incredibly unique. There is no other place like it. There are no parties. People don't sit one side or the other. People don't even get voted on based on the partisan designation that they may have. It's the Nebraska way. When I ran for Congress, I said I would go to Washington and I would take the Nebraska way to Washington. I've worked with Republicans on incredibly important pieces of legislation. Only 3 Democrats have voted with Republicans more than I have in the time in the 114th Congress. I have been ranked the 6th most bipartisan member of the United States Congress. Those aren't just things that I'm throwing out there. Those are factual. And I will continue to go back to Washington if I am elected, and I would appreciate your vote and do exactly the same thing.
Mr. Bacon, you have 90 seconds for your closing argument.
I want to thank Craig and Michael for doing this, and thanks, Brad, for being here as well. I'm running for Congress because I love our country, and I want to continue to defend it. I think I bring in very useful experience. But our country right now is struggling. We have $19.5 trillion debt. We have a regulatory environment that's crushing the small business community. We have a broken tax code. And we have a national security strategy that's broke. And I want to be a leader that comes to Washington, working in a bipartisan way, that moves the ball down the field on all of these core issues. Career politicians are not getting it done. I also going to bring useful experience there. 4 deployments to the Middle East, 30 years in NATO. My time in the military will be very useful as the second most senior veteran in Congress. Let me talk about bipartisanship. Brad keeps mentioning it. It was a bipartisan, quote, Democrat who gave us the tie-breaking vote that gave us Obamacare. It was another bipartisan Democrat that gave us a tie-breaking vote that went against a balanced budget amendment. We know when the chips are down, Brad's going to be marching right behind Nancy Pelosi, and we can do better. Bipartisanship for me is working across the aisle to move the ball down the field on those core issues facing our country. I look forward to serving you. I'm going to work hard for your vote, and I would ask for your vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bacon. That'll have to be the last word for the night. I'd like to thank both of our candidates for participating tonight and for your willingness to run for public office.
Also, a special thanks to our viewers, listeners, and readers. For more analysis on this debate and to rewatch the debate in the coming days, you can go to KMTV.com or Omaha.com. We encourage you all to vote in the election. Don't forget, it's Tuesday, November 8th. Thank you for joining us. Good night.
Hi, I'm Don Bacon. I swore my first oath to the Constitution when I got commissioned in the Air Force back in 1985. I make the same pledge to you today. If you allow me to represent you, I will defend the Constitution and our district as most senior retired military officer in Congress. Partisan politics and political attack ads don't mean much to me because I've seen the real threats our nation faces at home and abroad. I am General Don Bacon, and I approve this message.